Ooh, that looks tasty. Hungry Gamer is back with another crowdfunding preview, and today we're talking about Timelancers from Party Tales Games. Now, before I get started, please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in this rules overview, that's where you'll find the corrections. And additionally, do note that everything that you see here is still in the prototype phase. Also, I will say that I've condensed the board a little bit. I have decks of cards just on the excess space on the player board, and you're not going to get the full sight of the individual player board down here. And I don't have the place where you store your resources on the screen as well. And additionally, you would actually have a choice of 3 of each of these colors of events over here. But again, this is just a brief overview. Now what this game is this is a Euro-style game where you are racing to kind of correct the timeline so that the faction that you are supporting, which each player has a different one, will wind up in charge. And it's in the far-flung future where genetic engineering has created these temps, they're called, or a different type of human that's able to withstand time travel, which is done through this new element, which the game just calls time gems for you, and that allows you to travel through time. And to do that, you're going to be going back in time to either just view and make sure that certain events happen, or you're going to go and try to make sure that those events happen differently. And at the end of the game, the player with the most points is going to win. You're going to get points through your objectives, which are basically have X amount of certain color events, either revised, changed, or repeated. And then through these various side jobs that you have, which again are going to have to do with which types of events you deal with your time machine, and that's basically how that's going to work. So let's quickly go through how the game plays. There's 2 places you're going to be moving around your character. You'll be moving them around on the board here, which is totally modular. As you can see, you can change the shape, and these tiles will be flipping back and forth. And each tile, when you go to it, is going to give you some kind of resource. You have your basic resources over here, you have your communication, you have cameras, you have disguises, you have weapons, you have medkits, and you have attachés, and then you have your money, you have gem upgrades, time gems, and time locks. And all of those you're going to be getting on this board, wherever it is that you go. For example, I may move here and collect 2 of these medkits, for example. And on your turn, you're going to have 3 different move actions, and that's going to allow you to do a move and activate the tile. Move and activate the tile. Now, all of these tiles can only hold, at the end of a turn, a single player. So if there's someone there, you can move through it. So for example, if green was right here, I could move here, activate that tile, then move away, but I couldn't end my 3rd movement there and share with them. Also, you notice there's these cars out here. These are the time enforcers, and they are going to try to stop you from doing your time traveling. And on each turn, and you're going to have different numbers of these depending on how many players you have in the game, you're going to know where the next turn they're going to go. So I know that one of these cars is going to the archives, the other is going to the jeweler. So I want to make sure that I don't end my turn here, because if the time enforcers show up, I will lose my entire next turn. The other thing that they do is they keep you from going there. So now I can't go to that space if that's where the time enforcer already was. So that kind of tightens this up over here. The other thing you can do is you can go to the time headquarters and go from the Timelancer headquarters onto your time ship down here. Now, each one of these is going to relate to a certain type of event. So I'll grab one of these right here. And you'll see right here that this is a modern event. So if I wanted to repeat a modern event, I would have to come right here. And it would cost me 1 time gem, and then I would collect whichever the event I want. So in this case, the Great Fire of London, and then I would have to pay 2 disguises and 1 communication, and then this would slot in right beneath my board here, which would then unlock this ability. So anytime I came back here and repeated another modern event, I would also get a camera and a communication. However, the other thing I could have done is I could have revised that event, which would cost me the same thing, though in this case it would cost me 2 time gems because it's harder to go back and change an event, and then I would slot it in the other way, and then it gives a different ability, but I would still place it somewhere on the board, and that would get me closer to accomplishing my objectives here. However, each one of these events also has a year attached to it. So the Great Fire of London happened in 1666. And so if I were to then say, repeat another modern event, like Cortez here in 1519, I would take it, I would pay for it, just like before, but then I would have to put it on my timeline before the Great Fire of London because, well, time. So I couldn't place it over here and then be able to get this ability with something over here. I would have to place it like so. Now, the other thing that's going to happen is when you revise an event, and I'll just grab another one right here. If I were to say revise the Magna Carta in 1215, which let's say I would then put right here, though I could put it even further to the left, but I revised it, that's going to change history moving forward. So then every single yellow event on any player's timeline that's after 1215 is going to flip. And the importance there is that's going to change whether or not your in-game goal is true or not. So now I have 3 revised yellows that would have accomplished it. However, if I already had these 2 right here at revise, played this one revised, they would both flip, and now that is no longer true, so I would not get that objective completed. You're going to be playing through the game, moving around back and forth, getting resources so you can accomplish these objectives, and of course these objectives are going to give you rewards in the form of upgrades and money, and moving around and capturing these events, whether you just repeat them or you revise them. And I'll note that you have modern events, which are the easiest, so it takes the fewest time gems, all the way up to the ancient events, which are hardest to do because they're furthest away, either 3 just to repeat an ancient event, or 4 time gems to revise an ancient event. And you saw I had these out here as a leftover from my previous game. These are upgrades that you can get, which just kind of give you a permanent time gem there. And that's actually how the base game works. You can go play around and around until somebody has managed to accomplish all 4 of their objectives. Then, when that happens, you will finish out and play equal number of turns. So in other words, once it gets back to the player who went first, the game will end. And then you're going to add up all of your points, which are going to be from these objectives. Your cards, whatever the number in the top corner is, that is facing up on your time machine, and your side jobs that you have. And then you're going to get some points for leftover resources, is going to determine who wins the game. There's also an advanced mode in which you actually have to, and I'm sorry I showed you the wrong side, you're simply trying to get 5 of your events sorted in the right way. However, if you're playing in advanced mode, you have to get all 9 of them, and there's actually a bit more flipping back and forth of the cards that goes on when you play that version. But for the most part, that's how this game is played. So what do I like about this game? The first thing I like is I like that within this relative simplicity of a Euro game, gathering resources, and contract fulfillment, it has a nice twist. And to me, that is the timeline aspect. And the 2 parts are, one, either you're revising it or you are just kind of reviewing it, repeating the event, which again in itself is not necessarily that interesting. Again, it's just a different type of contract and how you're doing it and which space you go to activate it. But what makes it interesting is when you're choosing to revise an event, it affects everybody around the table. It does that thing that I always wish would happen in a time travel game, which is if you change the past, it's going to change the future or your present. And that's the core of this game. And to me, because that works, this game works. It takes what is a pleasant, enjoyable Euro game, and it makes it particularly interesting because thematically it works because of the time travel changing the future, and with the in-game mechanics being this idea of you're trying to fulfill these objectives by having X amount of different colored events captured in the right order, that suddenly makes this a far more interesting puzzle, because not only are you trying to get the resources to get these events and get the ones with the right powers that are going to help, but you're trying to get them placed in the right spot on the timeline, because you have to actually be chronological as far as that goes, and hope that no one's going to revise an event before one of yours, which is going to change yours, which of course you can stop if you have the time lock and so on, but of course that's a resource, that's a point that you're spending to stop this thing from happening. And so it all starts to spiral in a very satisfying way, which again feels very thematic. That idea of if a fish farts a million years ago, suddenly we have 4 eyes instead of only 2. And I think that works really, really well. I think the core of this game, it absolutely captures in what is a relatively simple mechanical game that I think works quite well. I also particularly like the way the advanced game ups that challenge, because trying to get all 9 events on your timeline a certain way is particularly hard, especially because the advanced game allows for you to cause time ripples far simpler than in the core game. And so what I like about that is it offers 2 ways to play the game for your game group. You can have the quick, simple, fun experience of just trying to get the 5 events put right, and yes, you can change other people's events, but it's not as frequent as it is in the advanced game, or you can go for the meatier, harder, more challenging version as well, and I think that works particularly well. The thing that I didn't actually show you, and I should have in the rules overview, is in addition to revising an event, which means you put it upside down, every time you do that, you're also going to flip over all of the tiles of the same color, which will make the rewards for going to different places in the city slightly different as well. So I'm sorry I didn't show that in the video, but that's there as well. So now you have all these things you're trying to balance, all these things you're thinking about as you are revising events in history for several reasons. You might be doing it to accomplish your objective. You might be doing it because you want the color tile to flip. You might be doing it because you're hoping to stop another player from triggering the end game because you don't think that you're winning at that point in time. And I think all of that works very well in this game. And then the last thing I'll say is, at least when you're playing the core game, it's a quick game. You can really knock out a game very quickly, and you know how much I like that, to have a game that is a good puzzle, but it plays very quickly. The next thing that I like about it is, and I'm going to talk about this in my quibbles as well, seeing all these different events are really cool. There's a lot of neat events in there, some things you've never heard of, and it goes from things that feel like they're really big and unbelievably important, like the invention of gunpowder, to something that seems more innocuous. The first game of baseball ever played, but just kind of getting events that feel like they're really big and important to the world, and others that you might not think are important to the world, and kind of putting them out there, putting them in there is very interesting. Also, there's some events in there, for the most part, you're just hitting major events. There's some stuff in there that I did not even know happened, which I thought was really cool. For example, I did not know that in 1863, Harriet Tubman actually led a raid on a ferry, or helped lead a raid on a ferry. Obviously, I knew Harriet Tubman from the Underground Railroad, but I did not know this thing. And the fact that there's some events in this game that it can make me actually, oh my gosh, that's a thing? And I went and I looked it up, I think is really cool. So, what are my quibbles with the game? And I'm going to preface this by saying, I actually have more quibbles than I had things that I think work well in this game. But I'm going to preface this by saying that all of my quibbles are truly quibbles. They are small things, and they come to light because I actually think this is a very strong game. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that this is a more negative video than it is, because this is not. Now, the first thing is, as I mentioned, there are some cool historical events in the game. I feel like they've missed the boat a little bit on the world. For example, as near as I can tell, there's no events from Africa. There's 1 or 2 from South America. And as far as great women in history, there's some of the benchmarks, right? We got Harriet Tubman, you got Marie Curie. I wish it was a broader spread. Let's dig a little deeper than we are currently with the history in the game. Now, this is a prototype, and I don't know what kind of stretch goals they have, but I think we've missed the boat a little bit there. I also wish that they'd gone into the future, because it stops at 1999, which makes sense because of the ideas of what is done to history, but the game takes place in 2200 or something like that, so I wish they had actually gone into the future and made up some events that are important to history, because they actually have a whole story behind the game, which is there. And so I wish they'd done that. Maybe it'll be an expansion pack or something that you can kind of add on to get more cards. It's a very easy fix, but I'm intrigued enough by this game that I wish that there were more. Even though the events themselves are really just different numbers and different abilities that you get, still, I wish there were more and they were more varied. The next thing is, I like the idea that you can build your city in different ways and have different shapes, because that really does change the experience as you're playing if it's like a long, narrow city versus kind of a pretty much a big hexagon. However, the board itself, currently, in the prototype form, is just a blackboard with big old fat white lines. I feel like there's a miss there. I wish there was some art on that board. I think that would look really, really nice. Along with talking about the art, I understand why this was done. And that is, when you are revising the cards, you simply flip it over and it is super, super clear that it's revised, right? It says right there, revised. But now all of your art's upside down. And to me, it's a bummer because for the most part, I want to look at the art. And I wish that it was, you flipped it over. And I know it means you would be able to see one more thing maybe, but I feel like that's an easy fix, right? You just put 2 cards out and then have the top of the deck there as the next one, or you have a cover card or whatever. But that would also mean you would need double the art assets, so I understand why that's there. But as I said, I'm nitpicking here, and I wish that was something that was going to happen, where it would be different art showing that, in this case, the Magna Carta was not signed by King John. The Magna Carta was signed by, I don't know, Sir Hiss or whatever. The only other quibbles that I have, one of them is just an ease of play. On your big timeline, it's set up to where you have the cheapest time gem thing on the left and the most expensive time gem thing on the right. And it makes thematic sense that it takes the most power to go all the way back to ancient history and revise it. That makes sense. But it creates a little bit of confusion when you're playing because the timeline you're putting below that. And so on the far left side of your timeline, you're sending your player piece to adjust modern events. But if you get a modern event, you're putting that all the way towards the right side of the board, which actually slots in below something that says ancient. Now, can you figure this out? Absolutely. Is it unnecessarily confusing? I think it is. In fact, my wife, who really, really liked the game a lot, she found that confusing, and I had to remind her a few times, no, it has to go over there because of the timeline. I think they could just switch that around and have it go from most expensive on the left side to least expensive on the right side, and I think it would actually solve that problem. The next thing is, we found that even though the cards that tell you where the time enforcers are going to go are exceedingly easy to read, they're exceedingly easy to forget where they're going to go next turn. And you can just bumble into making a mistake. And even when I demoed it with the designer, he said over and over again, okay, don't forget this, don't forget this. And so we just put a couple little red beads saying this is where they're going to go next turn. And we just put it out there. And I hope they actually just add something very simple to the game. So it's out there and you say, nope, that's where they're going to go. Because you know where they're going to go. It's not a gotcha mechanic. So let's not let people stumble into making a mistake like that, because if you get caught, you lose a whole turn. So if that's going to happen, if you're going to lose a turn, you should be doing it with purpose. You're like, you know what, I know I'm going to lose a whole turn, but it's going to be worth it to me to do that. So hopefully there'll just be like little tokens and stuff that you can put out there that'll mark that. And the last thing I'm going to say is, it has a pretty interesting story. They have some history that they give you, all of the different corporations. They give you a history, who founded it, what they want, what their goals are, why they're sending you back to do what you're doing. But when it comes to this is, you're kind of playing the bad guys, because all of these corporations, they're at best selfish. And time travel is outlawed in this world because of all the damage that was done, the billions or millions of people that were killed in the Time War. And you're doing it to get paid. So you're kind of a bad guy. And that's fine. It's an interesting story. But as I said, the theme comes through in this game, and you might not want to play the bad guy. And along with that, it's got unique art for all the characters. I wish they had some kind of power. Make them a little bit different. Like, they have a story. They have a story. I can look at them and see there's a story behind these characters. I wish they did something different. I don't know, even if it was just a once per game get a resource, or you get started with different resources or something. I feel like there's a little bit of a missed opportunity there. Now, as I said, I just had a bunch of quibbles, but they are very, very quibbly quibbles because I like this game. This is a game that I'm going to hold on to this prototype. If they ask me to send it on, I'm going to send it on. And I'm looking forward to them sending me a copy if they decide to do so. This is a good game, and it does time travel in a way that I feel thematically nails that thing of you change one thing in the past and it has drastic events for everybody in the future. And it creates for a very intriguing puzzle wrapped around what is a very simple game to play, especially if you played a lot of Euro games. So there you have it, folks. That is Timelancers. I am far higher on this game than I thought I was going to be after I got the rules demo on TTS. I think it's a very, very clever game. I think it is one that does time travel thematically as well as any other Euro game out there. Now, there's other games out there and you can argue which one has stronger mechanics and what are you looking for. Like if you're looking for Anachrony, you're looking for something of that weight, well, you're not looking for Timelancers. It's much lighter. But thematically, it nails that one part of time travel that to me is the most interesting. And because it nails that one bit, I think it makes for an incredibly satisfying puzzle that you're playing and some great challenges. And all in all, I think this is a good game, and I think it could be, with the right development, with the right expansions down the road, a great game. And to me, that's what Kickstarters and GameFound and that, well, I've never done a backer kit, and backer kits are all about, right? Here's a core. If we support this, it can be great. And I think this game could be great. Right now, it's already good, and I already think it's worth your time checking out if you're into Euro games and contract fulfillment style games. So there you have it, folks. That is Timelancers. As always, if I've made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp, and I'll get that into the Klingon subtitles. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Maybe consider becoming a channel member. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.